because I also want to talk about Donald Trump's abortion strategy tearing the Republican Party apart. Major, high-profile, pro-life, anti-abortion activists like Lila Rose, huge in the United States, anti-abortion movement, are coming out against Trump. This is a tweet from Lila Rose, who posted this week, without some indication that they will work to make our nation a safer place for preborn children, Trump and Vance are making it impossible for pro-life voters to support them. Being less passionate about killing babies than Harris and Walz is not enough. Now, there was a story about this by Mark Caputo in The Bulwark. He wrote that the increasingly pro-abortion position, as he described it, from Trump and Vance is, quote, stretching the lesser of two evils voting strategy to an untenable position. And that's long the way the pro-life movement, the anti-abortion movement, whatever you want to call it. As a pro-life person, I don't mind being called anti-abortion one bit because, in fact, I am. But that is a huge aspect of the movement, was the lesser of two evils sort of lens, applying that to Donald Trump in particular. But because they've increasingly said, you know, with the issue becoming powerful, it's on the ballot in states like Nebraska, it's lost in states like Kansas, red states that are losing to this kind of libertarian live and let live issue, and saying, you know, they wouldn't, J.D. Vance saying he wouldn't seek to codify Roe on a national level, or he wouldn't seek to block the codification of Roe on a national level, just talking about taking it to the states. All of this has, quote, spooked Trump so badly, according to Caputo, that he began privately referring to abortion as, quote, the A word. One advisor to Trump told Caputo that activists like Rose are, quote, being unrealistic about modern campaign realities. Here's the quote: she should start up a new group called CLA, the Coalition to Lose on Abortion. Now, a writer at National Review came out and defended Lila Rose and said, you know, it's really important that you have the moral clarity on this issue. You can do both. You know, you can criticize and have the moral clarity and still be perfectly effective at what you do if your top issue is abortion and you are on the right. I mean, there's been a MAGA pile-on of Lila Rose, not just about her new position, but about her activism in general, about the activism of pro-lifers who use graphic representations of abortion. A lot of people in the Trump camp are now just tearing down Lila Rose. And Max, this is deeper than the 2024 election, because Republicans post-Roe now have to deal with the Dobbs reality, and it's not going well so far.
As with the environmental issue, Trump and the Republicans are trying to walk a tightrope, but we all know it's nigh on impossible when it comes to abortion. Trump's appointment of Vance, considering the Ohio governor's stance on childlessness and his Catholic faith, it looked like a good move on this front. But political realities have struck. Can any politician really be absolute and dogmatic when the rubber meets the road? Trump recently posted on social media that his election would be great for women and great for women's reproductive rights. He favours leaving the lawmaking to the states rather than Washington. But on the religious right of the Republican Party, he's come under extreme fire. It's very easy for these voters, such as Lila Rose and these commentators, to cast Trump and Vance as abject heathens, quite frankly, and the emotional attacks, they're used often, but they're very effective.
And the reality for people like Lila Rose, who I generally like and kind of agree with in this exchange, because abortion is her number one issue. So, of course, that's how she's going to react to Trump and Vance shrinking from the fight in the post-Dobbs era, even though politically, this is how two things can be true. Morally, it can be perfectly consistent and understandable for Lila Rose to take the position she is taking. But the second thing can be true, that it is politically not pragmatic whatsoever. And it, shrinking away from the fight is probably the politically pragmatic decision from the Republican Party. A lot of pro-lifers, and I think J.D. Vance would have previously been in this camp before he was tapped by Trump, would have said the best thing to do is be sort of bold about your position. Don't look like you're lying about it. I still believe that, but J.D. Vance previously was against exceptions for rape and incest and has started talking very differently about this issue since he was being considered for Trump's VP pick. Like the week before he was named as Trump's VP pick, he started talking about this differently, and people noticed and were upset about it. And I think it does just go to show that Republicans basically have zero game plan for how to deal with abortion in the post-Roe era. And as they try to find a game plan that's politically viable? Can you make any pro-life, can you make any anti-abortion laws if you don't have any power, is the question that people like Michael Caputo are asking. If you can't, then is it all for naught? Is all of the sort of purity politics for naught if you're not getting elected? And Max, it's so interesting how this issue plays out in the UK and overseas in Western Europe especially, because a lot of people in the sort of Trump-Vance camp right now will say, we just have to talk about this in terms of putting ourselves on par with the rest of the West, with Europe. And that's true. America, because of the patchwork of state laws, does have a lot of places that are wildly more permissive. The Roe era, more permissive than most of Western Europe. But the politics of it seem to be so different over by you.
I suppose it's the same issue, obviously, but most of Southern Europe is quite Catholic, is quite religious, and so in that way, you have a very similar resistance to it. But when you mentioned Hayley Strack's piece in the National Review, I thought it was so telling. There was a particularly revealing quote about Republicans. She said, Republicans have watered down the courage and doggedness they once displayed when combating the issue of abortion in service of Trump's ever-changing stance. And just as with the way Trump is trying to use RFK, we know that after Kamala Harris's performance at the DNC, Biden stepping down, there's been a real change of momentum, and it's a serious battle now. And I think Trump sees that, and it's not, well, it is equivocation, but it's also moderation. And when politics is so complicated, there are too many people in the middle. There are too many people who could be swayed by Trump and Vance, that if you were to take a proper stance, it might not be politically shrewd, shall we say.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, most people don't agree with J.D. Vance about, not having exceptions for rape and incest. So most elected officials don't have to defend that because they don't believe that. So that's kind of a separate question. But most Americans are opposed to third trimester abortion and in favor of first trimester abortion. So the Republican Party, if it wants to be viable, it's an issue that a lot of people care about, a lot of female voters care about. So I understand why this debate is happening, but it seems like the debate isn't pushing anybody in a more conciliatory direction where there's unity. Instead, it is actually increasingly making this, quote, lesser of two evils dynamic utterly untenable and increasingly impossible. And Trump is such a singular figure that he is particularly, in a post-Trump world, to the extent that's something we can even conceive of, this gets even more complicated.